Well, is the world just being hypocritical or blind to the reality on the ground? Is the world being hypocritical or blind to the reality on the ground? Or is the rush to recognize Palestine nothing more than a feed the crocodile and it won't bite you strategy? And if yes, how true is that? In the aftermath of October 7th, when Hamas militants slaughtered families, raped women, burned infants alive, and dragged hostages into Gaza, Israel insists it is fighting a war of survival. Yet while Israel struggles to dismantle terror networks and protect its citizens, much of the international community now turns to reward the very cause Hamas claims to champion, Palestinian statehood. Now, is this diplomacy or appeasement of terror dressed up as peace? And in elevating a statehood bid while Israeli hostages remain in captivity, has the world lost sight of the victims and chosen instead to legitimize the perpetrators? Well, welcome to the Flash News. I am Star Smart. Well, before we head into today's focus, we take a look at the fact that the Ambazonian Strategic Constituent Assembly, known as the ASCA, is being described this year as more than just a gathering. It is a crucial strategic council at a time when the liberation movement faces both opportunities and challenges. Stakeholders from across the globe are converging to shape policy, strengthen diplomatic outreach, and unify internal structures. Observers say that the timing could not be more critical, coming just as the Ambazonian leadership prepares to declare a nationwide lockdown against what they call colonial elections. Now, for Ambazonians, Independence Day on October 1st is not symbolic, it is existential. It marks the birth of their nation before the disputed 1961 union with La République du Cameroon, a union they regard as illegitimate. Now, each year, this day, October 1st, rekindles not only memories of sovereignty lost, but also the determination to reclaim it. Now, to the people of Ambazonia, October 1st is both a commemoration of identity and a recommitment to the struggle, reminding the world that their quest for self-determination is far from over. Now, heading on to today's focus, we see that nearly 2 years after Hamas's October 7th massacre, the Middle East is still engulfed in bloodshed. That day, remembered in Israel as one of the darkest since its founding, saw over 1,200 Israelis murdered in their homes, and at a music festival with hundreds taken hostage into Gaza. For Israel, the war that followed is not a campaign of choice, but a battle for survival. Israel insists its operations in Gaza are necessary to dismantle Hamas's military infrastructure, secure the release of its hostages, and ensure that such a nightmare never happens again. Now, in the last 24 hours alone, more than 30 Palestinians have been killed in new airstrikes, including 11 members of a single family in Al-Zawaida. The IDF says its troops have pushed deep into Gaza City, determined to root out what it calls the command and control core of Hamas. But outside the battlefield, another war rages on. It is a diplomatic one. In recent months, Canada, France, Spain, Ireland, and even the United Kingdom have formally recognized the Palestinian state. To these countries, recognition is a symbolic step towards peace. But is it? Because the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sees that differently. Standing before the United Nations General Assembly in New York this week, he accused Europe of hypocrisy, weakness, and blindness to reality. Well, let's take a look at an excerpt from that speech at the United Nations General Assembly of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
40 years ago, I told the sponsors of that outrageous resolution to expel Israel, gentlemen, check your fanaticism at the door. Today, I tell President Abbas and all of you who would shamefully support that resolution, check your fanaticism at the door. The singling out of the one and only Jewish state continues to be a moral stain on the United Nations. It has made this once respected institution contemptible in the eyes of decent people everywhere. But for the Palestinians, this UN House of Darkness is home court. They know that in this swamp of anti-Semitic bile, there's an automatic majority willing to demonize the Jewish state on anything. In this anti-Israel flat earth society, any false charge, any outlandish allegation can muster a majority. In the last decade, there have been more resolutions passed against Israel in this hall at the UN General Assembly than against the entire world combined. Actually, more than twice as many. Since 2014, this body condemned Israel 174 times. It condemned all the other countries in the world 73 times. That's more than 100 extra condemnations for the Jewish state. What hypocrisy, what a double standard, what a joke.
Well, rewarding terror with statehood, as Netanyahu thundered, is indeed not justice. It is surrender. His words cut deep, suggesting that recognition is not about moral conviction, but about fear. Fear that Hamas cannot be defeated. Fear of unrest on Europe's streets. Fear of standing firm with Israel against the tide of global opinion. Now, outside Israel, the protests were just as loud. Families of hostages demonstrated at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport, demanding their loved ones be brought home. Netanyahu, however, was clear. Concessions made out of fear are not concessions. They are betrayals of the dead and the living alike. Donald Trump, for his part, has positioned himself as a mediator who refuses to forget October 7th. On the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, Trump held meetings with Arab and Muslim leaders, calling them my most important meeting, having to do with Gaza. Let's take a listen.
So this is going to be a very important meeting. It's going to be a meeting with great leaders from a very important part of our planet, the Middle East. And we want to end the war in Gaza. We're going to end it. We're going to end it. Maybe we can end it right now. But they're respected all over the world. They're respected by me in the Oval Office, I can tell you that. They're respected by the United States. And we're here to see if we can get the hostages back and get the war over and get back to life in the Middle East, which is a beautiful life, but it's much more beautiful without wars, right? So I really greatly respect the fact that you're here. And we're going to get it done. We're going to have a meeting. If we can agree to something, I'm going to see the people in Israel, including Bibi, and we're going to get something done because it's gone on too long, and we want it to end. And we want to get those hostages back too. We've gotten most of them back. Right now they have 20 hostages and 38 dead bodies. And the parents of those young people that were killed and are right now in body bags, they want their son or daughter back just as much as they wanted them as though they were alive. We have to get them back. We have to get the 38 back, and we have to get the 20 back.
Well, as you can hear, the President Donald Trump, he urged them to press Hamas to release hostages and warned the broader world not to legitimize terrorism by granting statehood under fire. Do not forget what Hamas did. Trump told one gathering, do not erase the victims by rewarding their killers. In a pointed exchange with French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump argued that recognizing Palestine now is not statesmanship but capitulation. Well, let's take a listen to this exchange between Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron.
Nobody forgets the 7th of October. I went there a few days after, taking families in my hands, and we experienced all together these horrific attacks. And by the way, we lost a lot of French people in these terrorist attacks. But after almost 2 years of war, what is the result? Once again, They killed the top leaders of Hamas. It works. This is a great achievement. But at the same time, you have as many Hamas fighters as you had the first day. So it doesn't work to dismantle the Hamas. This is not the right way to proceed. So we need a full-fledged process, and we worked very hard on the day after, and I totally share this sequencing. The release of all hostages, the ceasefire, the resume of humanitarian aid, the day after in Gaza to stabilize the land. And we need a political perspective, and this is why we took this decision on recognition.
Well, I have to say that I'm on the side of Israel. I've been on the side of Israel really my whole life. And we are going to get a solution. And it's going to be a solution, hopefully, that's good for everybody. And I understand where you are and where other people are, too. And we just have to get this solved. We have to get the hostages back. We want to get the war over. That's very important. We're going to end the war, get the hostages back, and we want them all back. We don't want to have one and then we'll give another two in about 3 months from now. We've been doing that for a long time. And in all fairness, we've gotten a lot of hostages back. But you have 20 hostages and you have probably 38 bodies, dead bodies. And the people that I see, and I speak to Israeli families, I was speaking to American families before, but we got them back. But I speak to Israeli families, and they want the son who died. They want their dead son back as much as though he were alive.
Well, prior to this exchange, Trump accused Hamas of rejecting reasonable offers for ceasefires and prisoner exchanges, insisting that peace can only begin once accountability is demanded, not just on one side, but on both sides. Yet even in his sternness, he stopped short of pressing Israel to withdraw, leaving room for ambiguity, but signaling where his sympathy lies. Meanwhile, Gaza itself remains on the brink of humanitarian collapse. Hospitals have gone dark due to bombardment and fuel shortages, with children and the chronically ill most at risk. Gaza's health ministry reports over 65,000 dead since the war began, a toll that fuels international outrage but has not shifted Israel's resolve. For Prime Minister Netanyahu and Trump alike, the common thread is this: if the world rewards Hamas now, what message will it send to the next generation of terrorists? Well, still with Trump, if Gaza dominates the Middle East, Ukraine still dominates Europe. Russia's invasion launched in February 2022. It has dragged on for nearly 4 years now, grinding both armies into exhaustion, but showing no sign of resolution. Tens of thousands have been killed, millions displaced, cities reduced to rubble. Now, at this year's United Nations General Assembly, Donald Trump pressed many with a dramatic rhetorical pivot. After a 1-hour bilateral meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Trump declared that Ukraine can and will reclaim its lost land and dismissed Russia as a paper tiger. Let's take a look at what this bilateral meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy was exactly like.
Well, the biggest progress is that the Russian economy is terrible right now. It's, as you know, it's crashing. And that, frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army. It's pretty amazing. You know, this is a war that should have ended in 3 days, 4 days. People said it was going to be very quick, and you got to hand it to the Ukrainian soldiers and everybody involved. It's still going on, and that's not a good thing for Russia. This was supposed to be quick, and so, you know, Russia doesn't look very distinguished, having taken 3.5 years now, right? It's about 3.5 years of very hard fighting, and it looks like it's not going to end for a long time.
And that was said right next to President Zelenskyy. Well, the words of President Trump marked a sharp break from his past. Not long ago, Trump had floated the idea of territorial concessions, hinting that Ukraine might have to negotiate peace by giving something up. But today he spoke of Ukrainian victory. Zelenskyy welcomed the shift warmly, calling Trump well-informed and engaged. Moscow, unsurprisingly, scoffed, mocking the remarks as political theater.
Thank you for your personal efforts to stop this war just now, Mr. President. And I'm happy to say that just now our first ladies First Ladies of Ukraine, First Ladies of the United States.
Yes.
Just now we'll have a meeting about Ukrainian children. Thank you for Melania's personal involvement to this topic. And this is very important. I will brief Mr. President and his team what's going on the battlefield. We have good news. Of course, we want to stop the war, and with your help, first of all. And it's good that our soldiers occupied 360 kilometers this month. And of course, we will speak about how to finish the war and about security guarantees. A lot of what to discuss. Thank you.
Well, the timing matters. On the battlefield, Ukrainian forces are pressing hard in Kharkiv, while Russian missiles continue to pound Kyiv and Odessa. NATO warns that Russia is escalating cyber and energy warfare, even as it struggles to hold ground. For Trump, the optics are clear. He has moved from skeptic to champion of Ukraine's survival, and in doing so cast Russia not as a giant but as a faltering aggressor. But then critics ask, will Trump's words be matched with his actions? Will Washington under his leadership commit new aid, or is this more narrative warfare than material support? For Ukrainians under bombardment, words matter, but weapons matter more. Still, Trump's pivot cannot be ignored. In 1 week, he shifted from doubting Ukraine's ability to survive to declaring Russia a hollow threat. It is a reminder that in global politics, the narrative is as important as the battlefield. Well, still on Trump's pull-aside meetings and his United Nations General Assembly presence, we see that for President Donald Trump, this year's United Nations General Assembly was not only about official speeches, but about personal diplomacy, and his pull-aside meetings were strategic. With Arab leaders on Gaza, with Zelenskyy on Ukraine, with European leaders on Palestine, and his message was consistent. Do not surrender to fear. Do not reward terror. Do not let weakness dictate policy. Let's take a listen to President Trump during his United Nations General Assembly speech.
I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much.
Well, as you heard, the President Donald Trump, his presence at the United Nations General Assembly wasn't with quite some strange disruptions. First, the escalator carrying every other leader worked perfectly until the First Lady and President Trump stepped on it. It abruptly stalled, literally stopping. And later, as he took the podium, his teleprompter failed, forcing him to abandon prepared notes and declare that he could speak from the heart even better without the teleprompter. But then we see that this might not exactly be a coincidence, or possibly it is. But then we have to ask the questions, why did these failures occur only during President Trump's appearances? And why was his the only speech marred by glitches? If it was accidental, why so perfectly timed? If intentional, what message was being sent and by whom exactly? Well, Trump, unfazed, used the mishaps to project resilience, turning technical embarrassment into political strength, but the symbolism lingers. In the world stage already stacked against him was someone trying to dim his spotlight. That is a question that leaves to be answered. Meanwhile, the broader hypocrisy was impossible to miss as we saw leaders rushing to justify the recognition of Palestine as a step towards peace. Yet as Netanyahu warned and Trump echoed, recognition born out of fear is not courage, it is surrender. Europe, in Netanyahu's words, has blinded itself, and Trump pressed the same truth. Rewarding terrorism does not stop it, it multiplies it. So the question remains, if Israel's reasoning is rooted in survival, if Trump's efforts are aimed at peace through accountability, then why such determination to sideline and undermine him? Why the escalator? Why the teleprompter? Why the subtle attempt to weaken his presence? Until that question is answered, the world must ask itself, is this diplomacy or is it theater? A theater where fear plays the lead role and truth is forced into the shadows. Well, this has been the Flash News. Thank you for watching. Until next time, have a blessed day.